Two. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you all had yourselves a wonderful day today. Good. Well, I think it's time to get started. So I'm really ready to go forward, and I hope you are as well. We're going to really get into this thing that is plaguing our society in a very large way. None other than cancer. And so we have a lot to cover this evening. I am privileged to be your host for the evening, Dwayne Lemon. For those of us who might be here for the first time, welcome, welcome. And night after night, we have just been going through understanding disease, really getting into the silent killer, hypertension, looking at diabetes and answering the question, is it really the sugar? What is the answer to that? No. What's really the answer? Fat. Remember that? We got that, the fat. And one of the things I didn't get a chance to mention last night, for those of us who were here, and obviously for those of you who weren't, is that what is really the issue with the fat is that when that fat builds up in the body, imagine a cell is super sensitive, okay? So when insulin normally goes to a cell, that cell picks it up and opens up and absorbs the glucose, and we have energy. But what happens is when you have a lot of fat build up in the body, then it kind of creates almost like a coating over the cell. And then what happens is when the insulin is trying to tell the cell to open, that fat coating is skewing the communication. And as a result of that, the cell's not opening as actively as if that presence of fat was not there. So that's one of the reasons why fat in the body, fat on the diet, we really want to try to overcome that because it allows us to have good cellular integrity by which our cells can respond as soon as the insulin knocks on its door and says, let the glucose in. So those are some of the things that, we understand when we go deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding the body. And so tonight, we're going into the runner-up. Number one killer in America is heart disease, but this is the runner-up. And the runner-up is none other than cancer. And so it is, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And cancer is something that is baffling the world at large, catching us by storm. I am thankful for a lot of things that's happening in the world of traditional medicine because there's a lot of things out there that can be very good. Probably one of the things I love most in traditional medicine is immunotherapy. That's probably one of my favorite later treatments nowadays because it's not, though it is a drug still, it's a drug that's designed to boost your immune system. And in that respect, I think that's pretty cool. But nevertheless, we're going to look at some things that we don't often hear as it relates to the traditional medical world and what is going on as it relates to cancer. So as we prepare to go ahead and talk about this evening, night after night, it has been my prayer and my privilege to always acknowledge God and to pray. And I always hope that would never prove offensive to anyone in this room, but I would like to go ahead and do that at this time. And if you don't mind, just bow your heads with me, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Our loving Father, we are so grateful. We thank you for everyone that has made it out here tonight. And Lord, I'm sure everyone has high expectations that they can learn some things, whether it be for themselves or someone they know and love. And so I'm just praying that you would please bless us, give us wisdom beyond our years, that we might understand deep things, not merely from your word, but also from true science and good common sense. And I thank you that you've heard this prayer, and I do ask it with the forgiveness of my and our sins. Amen. All right, so as we look at all of the things that we're dealing with cancer, one of the first things I wanted to do was play a little video clip. As I do night after night, I always try to play a brief video clip that just kind of gives us an idea of the topic at hand. So watch this video clip, and then I'll be right back.
This animation will show how cancer develops. Cancer is caused by the cells of the body changing so that they grow in an uncontrolled way. Click the navigation arrows below the animation screen to play, pause, rewind or fast forward the animation. Your body is made up of cells. Nearly all the cells in the body have a nucleus, which is the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains genes, which control everything about the cell, including how the cell grows and when it will die. Damage to genes is the underlying cause of cancer. The damage may be inherited or caused by other factors such as cigarette smoke. The cells of your body divide to make more cells, so that your organs and tissues can grow and repair themselves. The nucleus controls this division. In cancer, the cells divide in an uncontrolled way, and often more quickly than normal cells. In many cases, the cells form a lump called a tumour. Cancerous tumours can spread into surrounding normal tissue. Not all tumours are cancerous. Some do not infiltrate the surrounding tissues, nor do they spread to other parts of the body. These are known as benign tumours. Tumours that invade the surrounding tissue and spread to other parts of the body are known as malignant tumours or cancer. Cancer cells can invade blood and lymph vessels. These provide a route for spread to other parts of the body to form secondary cancers. This is called metastasis. This is the end of the animation. Click on the animation screen to watch it again.
So, on a super simple level, when we're dealing with cancer, something is happening all the way down to the gene level, to the cell level. The cells were made to function a certain way. There's a reason why David the psalmist said, I am fearfully and I'm wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, Psalms 139 and verse 14. And the reason why is because the more that we study the body, you will start to discover that this is truly a marvelous makeup. This could not have, come about as happenstance. It was made by a designer. And so it is that on a cellular level, we have a pretty remarkable system when it is faithfully studied. And so it is that when we look at cancer, we're dealing with something that's happening on the cellular level where the genes within that cell are now causing growth patterns that are abnormal. They're not normal. Cells are supposed to divide and split and grow, but there's a way that it can happen where it's very smooth, systematic, and patterned. But when we get into cancer, we're dealing with something that's moving at a very rapid pace and is growing way out of control in a very abnormal way. And so the question is, well, why does that happen? And so in the video, we saw that there were two things. One was that it says, hey, there's just some genetic factors. Again, heredity. But what do we learn about heredity? Heredity loads what? Heredity loads the gun, but what pulls the trigger? Lifestyle. And so you'll find, I'm going to let you know right now, all of us have cancer cells in our bodies. Now, I've been living 47 years thus far, and though cancer cells are in my body, it has not taken over for one reason. It is because my immune system is still stronger than any of those cancer cells that are moving around. And why is it that you don't have cancer yet? It is for the same thing. So I like to say, wow, for 47 years, can you imagine that? You can say for 50, you can say for 60, some of us could say for 70, some of us could even say for 80 or more years. Your body is fighting. You got a fighter body. That's pretty nice. And so it is that the key thing is, hey, well, let me do what I can, because the one problem is that as we do get older, the body, if we're not careful, the body does not fight as well. And this is how, unfortunately, in older age. And that's why if you ever look at the statistics on cancer, once you get about to the age of 40 and above, it's kind of open season. You can get pretty much anything. And so we got to be fairly intentional about trying to avoid this. One of the first principles that I want us to remember is this. The life of the flesh is in the blood. So anytime a doctor wants to know what kind of disease you have, what do they have to draw? They have to draw blood, right? And so it is. Why do they do that? Because they understand that two things flow through blood, life and disease. They both flow through blood. So if you want to know how well you're doing, they're going to draw your blood to find that out for you. And then it'll let you know, oh, your white blood cell count is doing great. Oh, your red blood cells, your hemoglobin is doing great. Oh, your platelets are doing fantastic. But once they draw your blood and they see that your white blood cell count is low and that's the reason you keep getting sick, or they see your platelets are very, very low, and that's why if you do something as simple as bump into a chair, where normally I'm fine doing that just now, somebody else could do that, but if your platelets are too low, you'll have a bruise. on your arm. Some of us, we can be in a room nice and cool. The temperature feels very nice in here, very comfortable. There's some of us that can be under this cool breeze and we're just fine. But there's some people that if they're under the same little cool breeze that's blowing right now, they're freezing, even though they can have a shirt and a jacket on. Why? Because sometimes their red blood cells have become compromised. And so it is that, again, anytime somebody wants to know what's going on with me, good or bad, often it's going to be through checking out the blood. And so it is that when you think of your blood, think of cells. When you're thinking of cancer, you're thinking about something going wrong with the cells. If you're thinking about avoiding cancer, you need to think about how can I take care of my body on a cellular level. You don't just want to take care of things for the kidney or for the spleen or for this. You want to think, how can I eat and drink and live and move and do things in a way that keeps my cells strong. If you keep your cells strong, the rest of the body will take care of itself. So that's why you always think, eat and live on a cellular level. So here's an example. When you think about the cell, there are 5 things that your cells need. 5 things, guaranteed. You don't have any of these, we're going to have some problems. What are the 5 things that our cells need? Number 1, it needs oxygen. That's why it's important to be in environments that have pure air. If you don't live in an environment that has pure air, hey, I got something for you. Let me show you this real quick. That's why I love having my computer up front with me. I can make a last-minute change, and it's not a problem. So I want to show you this. This is really nice. So when you think about getting that pure, fresh air, right? Some of us live in environments where, we don't necessarily get the best of, good air quality, right? So if you don't get the best air quality, I'm going to show you a way that you can get some good, pure, fresh air, and it really works to your advantage and to my advantage. All right? So let's see. All right, let me go ahead and do this. Compress. This just came to my mind, so that's the only reason why I'm doing this for you all. I really want to give this to you. There it is. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to just cut and paste this one real quick. If you live in an area that you do not already have some good quality air, now you can just pretty much go online, you can type in the name of the city that you live in, and you can go ahead and type in the air quality, and it'll actually tell you what it is. So let me go ahead and show you this very quickly, and then we'll go back to it. All right, so again, one of the things that we know that our body needs is pure oxygen. We also need to keep ourselves well hydrated. Your cells need water. We have to put good nutrition inside of our bodies so the cells can take the nutrients, carry it throughout the system. When the cells have good oxygen, good water, and good nutrients, it's able to do the 4th job, which is to eliminate waste very well. Okay? If you're not giving your body oxygen, if you're not giving it nutrients, if you're not giving it hydration, it is not going to eliminate waste very well. But that's one of the jobs of our cells, and it keeps the poisons out. Okay, that's your immune system. That obviously is another function of the cells. Now, here we go. These right here are plants you can put in your home. One of the things I love is how nature speaks not merely about God, but it actually speaks about even salvation. The concept of Christianity when it talks about salvation is that there's this wonderful God who, one day decided to allow his son to take on our sins and die for us and then give us his righteousness in return. That's the story of the gospel. Well, do you know that every time you study the trees and the plant life, we see that over and over and over again? Do you know what the function of trees and plants are, especially a lot of these greens? They take in our poison. Every time you exhale, you're spitting out or blowing out something called carbon dioxide. It's an absolute poison. Every time you exhale, that's poison going out. But the reason why we don't die from all this poison of all these millions of people in Colorado is because we have trees. And you know what the trees do? They take in our poison and they give us back oxygen. And so the more that you live in crowded cities is the more that your oxygen levels get compromised. So what can we do to bridge that gap? Well, I would say, hey, why don't you try to get out of the city and move to the areas where there's more nature? Well, that would be a great thing to do for many. But the reality is that We're not going to more than likely do that now. Some of us probably don't see that in our near future. What can we do in that interim? You can get yourself some good plants. I'm going to show you something. Take a look at this. So if you look at some of these here, so this one right here is called the areca palm. And look at what it does. It removes indoor chemical toxins. So sometimes when you have paint in your house and it has certain toxicity in that paint, the areca palm can actually absorb the toxins and give you back pure, fresh air. Isn't that something? So there's a way that you can feed your body oxygen even if you live in a not so well oxygenated environment, again, like some of our crowded cities. So this is just a way that you can actually do that. And as you can see, there's a ton of palms here. I mean, you got the lady palm, and a lot of these things you can find literally at like Lowe's or Home Depot. And then, of course, you can go to all of the different stores that provide different plant life. But here with the lady palm, this improves indoor air quality. You also have the Decana Janet Craig. It removes trichloroethylene. I mean, like, these are some things that's just always in our homes. But if we get more and more of these type of plants, they help, okay? So again, when you're studying the body, you really want to be intentional about giving your body everything it needs. So that way you can have good, what's called cellular integrity. Your cells stay strong and they are able to handle that business that we just talked about. Providing good oxygen, getting some good water, nutrients, helps eliminate waste, and it keeps the poison out. Now, when you think about keeping poison out, because this is one of the ways that we're finding in a lot of cases people are getting cancer. Poisons coming in and not being properly processed and getting out. And then it affects us on a cellular level. Let's talk about an easy one, smoking. Okay? So we know that #1 cancer killer, especially amongst men in the United States, is what? Lung cancer. Okay? What is the #1 no-brainer, bona fide, factual cause of lung cancer? Smoking, okay? Bringing in poisons. But the body is not strong enough and the cells are not strong enough to keep it out. I used to watch a guy by the name of George Burns. You ever heard of him? Yes. You know, that man used to make me just, I marveled. I said, I mean, didn't he live to like almost 100 years old or something like that? But, you know, he was very bold about his, you know, smoking his cigar and everybody telling, hey, you're going to get cancer, you know, whatever. And, you know, hey, he made it up to 100 and didn't get it. So, you know, what do you say about that? Well, what obviously happened is he had such an incredibly strong genetic code that in the midst of introducing some vicious poisons in his body, he was able to totally get away with it, and he did not get stricken with disease. So there's some of us that have so much vital force that your body can ward off a lot of poisons very well that another person whose body doesn't have that. My mother is such an example of this. My dad was the smoker. My mother got the cancer. Dad did not get the cancer. And I mean, he's getting the direct inhale of the smoke versus my mom who's getting the secondhand smoking. But what it was that my mother did not have the vital force my dad had. My mom did not have the strong immune system like my dad had. So one day I got my blood work checked out, and they told me that my white blood cell count was low. They said, Mr. Lemon, your blood cell, like normally the number starts at 4 if you're looking at a range. So I like this point. I'm gonna give you a little education tonight. So watch this. So I got this report back saying my white blood cell count was low. So I was like, oh, really? My white blood cell count is low? They said, yeah, do you get sick? Do you get colds and flus and these type of things? I said, absolutely not. They said, when's the last time you had a cold? I said, about 4 years ago. A cold? I said, yep, I haven't had a cold in 4 years. And they were like, and your white blood cell count is low. This is strange. So, doctors scratching their heads. And my doctor thought, I want to send you to a hematologist. Hematologists are blood specialists. I mean, they study blood. And so the hematologist is looking me out, and he says, well, Dwayne, there's no bad news I have for you. I mean, you're doing great, et cetera, but your white blood cell count is low. And so here's the deal. Here's what happened. When my white blood cell count was always like at a 2.5 or 3, but the reference range is 4 and above. So they kept saying your white blood cell count is low. So lo and behold, when I had to get my surgery, after my surgery and my recovery, my white blood cell count went up to 7. And then it went up to 8. And then as I started to get healed more, it would just go back to 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2.8. Well, here it is that what I ended up discovering was this. Your medical laboratory reference ranges are based on sick people. That's how they come up with those numbers. So literally, like when they show you a lab report and it says normal white blood cell count is between 4,000 and 10,000. Where did they get those numbers from? Testing a bunch of sick people. So that's why the numbers shoot up so high. So let me give it to you in a way that I think you can appreciate it. Here's the reality of what happens with some of us, a lot of us who have a low white blood cell count, but you're as healthy as an ox. Here's the deal. I'll give it to you in such a simple term, you'll never forget it. When you live way out in the country with only 10 to 15,000 people, you only need one police officer because there's hardly any crime going on. But when you live in New York City, where there's millions and millions of people, you need hundreds and hundreds of police officers. You see, if your body and my body, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, if your body and my body is like a country environment that only has 10 to 15,000 people, you don't need a whole lot of military walking around to find diseases and bacteria and fungus and viruses because there's no crime going on. But it's where we have a lot of crime, that's where you need a lot of police officers. And so believe it or not, you actually don't want your white blood cell count to be at 6, 7, 8, and all of those other numbers. Because the medical references will say, oh, you're normal. But the reality is you got some inflammation. You got something going on in your body that's making your body have to keep fighting. Your body's like New York City. We need to get our bodies to be like the country, where there's hardly any need for police officers because there's just no crime going on. How do we do that? Give your body every day good oxygen. Give it some good water. Make sure you're loading it with nutrients. Then the body will do its ability to eliminate waste, and your white blood cells will keep that poison out. Now, one of the ways you're going to do that is through your elimination channels. So you have all of these wonderful elimination channels. This is why, truly, I'm telling you, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are these works. Your body and my body has natural cleansing agents. These are all of them right here. You got your skin, which is your largest organ, okay? And that's why you got little microscopic holes, pores, that open and close, okay? They help protect your body. They help eliminate the bad stuff, and they help lock in and keep in the good stuff, or they can absorb the good stuff. So that's one of the ways your body eliminates waste is through the skin, which means you got to do something to get that waste out. What do you got to do? Pay attention to my arms. What do you got to do? You got to get some exercise. The more you exercise, you see, family, the one thing you want to keep in mind is the more that you exercise, you got to make sure that when you exercise, your body heat is going up because that's how you're going to sweat. So the best exercise is the kind of exercise that turns up the heat. It gets your body hot. So that way you can start sweating and you're releasing waste. But in addition to that, you have your lymph system. Your lymph system works best. You have lymph system all over your body, okay? The lymphatic system. But do you know the best way the lymphatic system works? When you're moving. You got to move around. When you sit down too often, when you're lying down too often, your lymphatic system does not move very well. And as a result of that, remember how you saw the cancer cells and how they were kind of going through and eventually just getting into that bloodstream and they start flowing through that lymphatic system. And hence, that's one of the reasons why typically when people get cancer, outside of the host area, you'll find that typically the next thing that gets hit is the lymphatic system, okay? Because that's how it's going to carry through. So the more that you and I move around, if you have the kind of job that you sit a lot, you got to set a timer. You got to do something that at least every hour you get up and walk around for about 60 to 120 seconds, 2 minutes. You just get up and you walk around for 2 minutes. If you're a brainstormer and you sit down and you come up with all sorts of great and creative ideas, fantastic. But set a timer that after 1 hour, get up and just start walking and moving around for a little while. And by the way, you can get a stand-up desk. Any of you seen those? You can get those nice little stand-up desks and computer. I mean, man, you can do aerobics while you're taking care of your work. You just kind of get it in, So no matter what, you want to move around. Lymphatic system. Then, of course, you have your respiratory system. You know what that means? Deep breathing. One of the best deep breathing exercises that you can do to help get in good air that's going to help produce good, healthy blood, and also to exhale and get that bad stuff out is something called 4-7-8. How many of you are familiar with 4-7-8? Okay, here's what 4-7-8 is. You breathe in for 4 seconds. You're going to just take a deep breath in and you're 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hold it for 7 seconds and then you exhale for 8 seconds. So your exhale is not going to go, because you're not going to do that for 8 seconds. That's barely 1 second. When you exhale, you're going to do kind of the hissing sound. You're just going to go, and you do that for 8 seconds. Do 10 rounds of that in a given day. 4 seconds in, 7 seconds hold, 8 seconds out. Deep breathing. What does that help do? That keeps your respiratory system in good functioning. And hence, you're going to find yourself getting out that bad stuff and breathing in the good stuff. Another elimination channel is your urinary system. Well, one of the best ways that works is by water, water, water. Yes, sir. Yep. No, you don't have to. No. So for the walk part, that's when we were talking about the lymphatic system. Every hour you're sitting down, get up and take 2 minutes to just move around. Then you can sit back down again. Okay? That's for good lymphatic flow. Yeah. For the 4-7-8, for the breathing, you do 10 repetitions of that. You can do that 3 to 4 to 5 times in a day. Okay? Yep. And you pick the times that work best for your schedule. But it's always good to just take a break and just go outside and you just breathe in, hold it, get it out, and you do that 10 times. It's just an excellent thing. And if you by chance are a very nervous kind of individual, there's something called the parasympathetic nervous system, and you will find that the more that you breathe in through the nose and slowly out through the mouth, it has a wonderful impact on the parasympathetic nervous system, and it calms you down. It just helps you just calm down. So 4-7-8 is actually very good for people who battle with, panic attacks, anxiety, things of that nature. There's also something, if you find your heart racing, let me see if I could, take a look at me here, if you can see this. If you have if you find yourself going through a panic attack and your heart is racing, there's something called the vagal maneuver. Anybody familiar with that? Okay, when you think about the vagal maneuver, you're going to sit down almost similar to how you would if you were having a bowel movement. And then what you're going to do is you're going to lean forward. And as you lean forward, you're going to tighten your stomach like you're almost constipated and trying to push out. But what you're going to do is you're going to just go like this. This is if you're in the middle of a panic attack. Your heart is racing. You literally lean over, and then you just give a good, strong cough. You're just going to go like that. It literally resets the electrical current with the heart, and it makes your heart go from here to here. And it just helps your heart to start slowing down. Okay? It's called the vagal maneuver. Okay? You just sit down as if you have to have a bowel movement, lean forward, tense your stomach, lean forward, and just, and you give a strong cough. And that way it just helps reset that wire, as it were, and get the heart rate to slow down. Okay? Yes?
When you say stomach, do you mean belly or diaphragm?
Oh, I mean more like belly. Like actual belly, and you're tightening up there and just, then you get that cough, okay? But again, these are all things that you can do. Your colon and your liver, that's going to deal with diet. It's going to deal with diet. It's about what you're putting in your system. So believe it or not, your body can have wonderful ways. Now look at this. It says, bottom paragraph, emerging evidence ties endocrine disrupting chemical exposure to two of the biggest public health threats facing society, diabetes and obesity. The Endocrine Society said in announcing its 50-page scientific statement, it added that mounting evidence also ties endocrine disruptors to infertility, prostate cancer, undescended testicles, testicular cancer, breast cancer. All of these different things are happening because we're not enabling our elimination channels to work well. So that's the reason why I'm spending some time on this, because you can really defeat a lot if you just simply give yourself the time to understand your body and to take care of it. There's a lot you can do. That's why the title of our studies are Take Charge of Your Health. Let's continue. Let's get into some statistics. When you get into the statistics, leading new cancer cases, especially among blacks, from 2016, haven't seen the new estimates just yet, but here's what they were. Notice, for men, prostate cancer. Guys, you got to watch it. Prostate cancer. That's why another thing, men, you should get checked every year is your PSA. You should get your PSA tested, and you want it to be under 4. Once it's 4 or above, we're in trouble. That means that your prostate is a little inflamed. And gentlemen, you need to be careful with that because we are prone to, unfortunately, getting prostate cancer. Then you have lung and bronchus cancer, colon and rectum, kidney and renal pelvis, liver and intrahepatic bile duct cancers, non-Hodgkin lymphomas, that's a blood cancer. And then, of course, you have your pancreas, multiple myeloma, urinary bladder, and leukemia. That's for the guys. So, gentlemen, this is what we have to pay attention to. This is where, if we get hit, this is often how we get hit. We get hit with one of these. For the ladies, you pay very close attention. Breast cancer, of course, number 1. And then you got lung and bronchus, colon, thyroid. And the one that, of all of the cancers that are on here, there's one cancer that's really concerning me. And as you can see, it's on both the men and the women. And it's right here. It's this cancer, which is the pancreas. Cancer of the pancreas, okay? 3,210 men will get that in the year. For the women, 3,490. So one of the first things you'll notice that pancreatic cancer is very rare. It's very rare. But I need to let you in on something. One of the biggest problems that we're having right now is with abdominal cancers. And the reason why you really want to pay attention to abdominal cancers, which pancreatic cancer is one of them, is because they're silent. Pancreatic cancer is an abdominal cancer. What that means is you could literally, like, if somebody said, Dwayne, how do you feel? I would say, I feel fantastic. And I literally can have tumors right on my pancreas right now. Okay? So the reality is that you could actually have tumors growing on your pancreas and you would know nothing about it. And then one day, all of a sudden, when you discover your skin is super yellow, your eyes are yellow and you're jaundiced, all of a sudden you're getting this upper pain right here in the middle of the stomach area, and then it goes from here and then it radiates right to the middle of the back, not lower back. It's usually going to be middle upper. Once you start getting those type of pains, you'll start noticing, oh, wow. And then you go to the doctor and they're like, we're very sorry to tell you you have pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And the reason they do that is because abdominal cancers are typically not detected until stage 4. They're asymptomatic. When they start showing symptoms, too late. You're in a fight for your life. Pancreatic cancer, 4 months. Average time frame, 2 to 4 months. And so what happens is, are there people who have defeated pancreatic cancer? Yes, but it's probably 5%, okay? So it's a very small number. So this is one of the reasons why there are some things that I personally do. Now, I'm going to let you in on my business because I want you to try some of these things too. I don't live in fear. I was telling somebody earlier today or yesterday, there's a difference between being diligent and then being fanatical and just kind of going overboard, OCD. Diligent. Because a lot of abdominal cancers are so quiet, there are things that people can do to get checkups. So here's one thing you can do. If you have medical coverage, then it's not a problem. If you don't have medical coverage, then you can pay for it, and it only costs about $300 in a year. And that is get an abdominal ultrasound. You get an abdominal ultrasound. An abdominal ultrasound probably costs no more than $350. You budget for the year. You do it once a year. And truth of the matter is you don't have to. Do you know that tumors grow on the pancreas sometimes when you're diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the tumors were growing from literally up to 5 to 8 years ago. It's all abdominal cancers grow slowly until they get up to a certain stage. So what can you do? Again, you can get an abdominal ultrasound. When you get a full abdominal ultrasound, they're going to look at your pancreas, they're going to look at your liver, they're going to look at your gallbladder, they're going to look at all your bile ducts, they're going to take a look at your kidneys, they're going to look at your spleen, they're going to look at your aorta, they're going to look at all of that. And they will tell you, oh, there looks like there's a little growth there. Even though it's not causing symptoms, but they can see it. So there are things that you can do to actually be proactive. And that's one of them. You can get something as simple as an abdominal. Like if you got it in your family, pancreatic cancer or any abdominal cancers, just go ahead and get yourself an abdominal ultrasound once a year. It's not an end-all, be-all, but it is a pretty good precursor. It'll let you know. Yes, sir?
A couple of questions on this. So if somebody has type 1 diabetes, does that give an increase to pancreatic cancer?
It can. Any type of, pancreas-related disease. Like they'll tell you type 2 diabetes. If you got type 2 diabetes, you have an increase of a chance of getting pancreatic cancer. But the problem is that type 2 diabetes, in all honesty, it's not that there's a problem with the pancreas. The pancreas is giving the insulin, it's doing what it has to do. It's just that the cells are not responding to the insulin. But type 1 is different because type 1, there's an actual problem with the pancreas. If you get pancreatitis, again, you can increase your chances. So that's another reason why when you have a disease, you move with urgency to have it removed. Okay? Yes?
And so could you literally go through, we're talking about, blood work and so forth, would stomach cancers then cause the abnormalities with your white and red blood cells as well?
Oh, of course. I mean, yes. So can a stomach cancer, unfortunately, if somebody has stomach cancer, can it impact their blood work? Is that what I'm hearing you ask?
Well, I was just saying that, so for example, let's say you had the blood work, everything is fine, and then now you're scheduling to go get an ultrasound, an abdominal ultrasound.
Yeah.
Is that overkill at that point?
No, not at all, because ultrasound can see things that blood work would never pick up. It would never pick up. Now, if you're dealing with the stomach, you're not going to see that in an ultrasound. If you're dealing with the stomach, you're going to have to get something called an endoscopy. That's where they take a tube, go down your throat, and then they bring the tube down to your stomach. That's how you're going to see what's going on in the stomach. Okay? Stomach cancer is super rare. That's why you don't even see it here. Typically, people in Asia or Asian countries will get stomach cancers, and a lot of that comes from eating foods that are high in aflatoxins and all these things. It can get kind of deep. I don't want to overwhelm you with it. But the bottom line is that these are the things that's impacting us, and this is what we need to watch out for. So the bottom line is when we think about cancer, what's our first step? What do we learn? Ascertain the cause. Remember that? What is the cause? We learned that from the scriptures. The Bible says, the curse causeless shall not come. Because of that fact, the Bible then says, hey, the cause which I knew not, search it out. Okay? So remember, anytime you got an issue, don't just treat the symptom, get to the cause. Now, when we're talking about getting to the cause, what are some possible causes of cancer? Number one, remember, one cause of cancer is when the DNA in healthy cells becomes sick. Something went wrong on in the DNA. Well, by our habits of life, we are creating an internal environment that will either feed cancer or starve it. I can't wait to show you some facts on that. Now, knowing this, suppressed and inefficient immune systems can cause cancer in the system. 100,000 cells in the body become cancers every day, but the immune system keeps us from developing cancer. Like I told you earlier, we all have cancer cells, but our immune systems have been able to destroy it. So if cancer rises up in our system, often it is connected to a weakened or debilitated immune system. So that means that you got to keep your immunity up. When you think about, being healthy and staying healthy, you want to think about, how do I keep my immune system strong? Because if your immune system is strong, cancer cells, even if they show up, they'll be defeated. Okay? Let's continue. Sure.
If you have a autoimmune disease
But of course, so if you have an autoimmune disease, again, the body attacking itself, okay, and it can attack you on a cellular level, it can attack on an organ level, okay? In any of the cases, when you're dealing with autoimmunity, you definitely want to go ahead and tackle that. And you want to tackle it hard. And then from that, you will find yourself better in position to avoid various types of cancers. So yes, for sure, okay? Does that answer your question? All right, good. What are some things that can cause suppression in the immune system? Ladies and gentlemen, please pay close attention to this. Number one is, I'll go ahead and magnify it, that'll make it easier. Number one is negative emotions. What are some of those negative emotions? Guilt, anxiety, depression, and then, of course, stress. Folks, I'm here to let you know, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. Your state of mind will determine if you're victorious over your disease to a very large degree. It's your state of mind. If you are constantly allowing yourself to be riddled with guilt because of past failures, this is one of the reasons why, I'll be honest with you, I have now been a Christian for so many years. And one of the things that I love most, I was doing a Diabetes Undone class. And when I was doing Diabetes Undone, there was a guy there named Tony. And Tony came to me at the end of the presentation. He said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Are you a minister?" And I didn't pray before the meeting or anything. You know, it's a very secular area. This is in New England where I live. We have the highest concentration of atheists in America. So you really got to be like careful how you approach folks there. So, you know, no prayer, nothing. All we did was teach health. But somehow he said, "Are you a minister?" I was like, how did he know that? Like, was there a sign over my head? But nevertheless, I said, "I am." And he said, "Well," and he stepped in my face and he started cursing and all this stuff. And, you know, and he was just cursing. And when he finished cursing, he said, "So what do you think about that?" And I was just like, "Are you going to come here tomorrow night?" And then he was like, "I'll be there." And I said, "Then I'll see you." And then he was just like, "Okay." So I guess I gave him a thumbs up by the way I responded. So anyhow, you know, the next time comes along, and anytime I reference God, you could just see him in the meeting, and he's just like, you know, whatever, because he was like bona fide atheist. So eventually, there was one night where I dealt with the mind, and this is where I got Tony. I said, there's some of us that sooner or later we realize that there are some problems in our lives that we are totally incapable of solving. And when you have a problem that's so real that you can't escape it and you do not know how to solve it, I said, that creates an atmosphere of stress. I said, this is where the Christian has the advantage, because we can look to someone outside of ourselves to help us with our problem. And he can provide to us a peace. And I noticed that as I was talking about stress and anxiety and all these things, you saw Tony in the back like this. "That's me, that's me." He's going like that, pointing to himself. And so at the end of the meeting, I go to Tony. I said, "Tony," I said, "listen, man." I said, "I understand you're an atheist and everything else." And I said, most people are atheists because they're disappointed in God. You wanted God to come through for you. He didn't come through for you, and you punished him by saying, "I will not believe in you anymore." I said, "But I'm telling you right now, man, God has always been by your side. He's going to continue to be by your side, and he's going to call you to his heart, Tony." And do you know it was amazing to watch Tony just kind of say, "I appreciate that." I was like, "You're welcome, man." And I was like, maybe we'll go mountain climbing one day. He loves to climb mountains. Family, I'm telling you, if we're going to beat disease, especially cancer, it's very difficult, and I would dare to say almost impossible, to defeat it when you allow guilt to govern your mind. Anxiety, constantly living in remorse. You got to recognize that there's a God in heaven that says, "I forgive you. I pardon you." And in his eyes, after we confess our sins, he forgives us, and the Bible says he cleanses us from all unrighteousness. What that means is that the way you look before God is as a completely righteous person, like you never did anything wrong. I mean, how many of us would love a brand new start where our record says, "I never did anything wrong"? I mean, who wouldn't want that? And so again, I just give this to you to say, not only on a spiritual realm it's very dangerous to stay in remorse and guilt, but I'm also here to tell you it does not do you well for your immune system. It suppresses it. It makes it weak. And then when those cancer cells come in, your body's not able to fight like it was supposed to. Yes?
So I think the enemy knows that better than we do.
Yes, he does.
Constantly bombarding us with stress.
Fully agreed. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, sister. And that's why we have to learn how to find an access source to peace in the midst of all that stress. And we'll talk about that. So, another thing that's really important when you're talking about how to put my body in a place to avoid cancer. Number one, and number two is another important consideration and discussion. Possible causes of cancer is the acid-alkaline balance. This is one of the reasons why even the American Cancer Society will tell you, eat foods largely plant-based. That's exactly why they tell you that. Almost all of vegetables are alkaline. And then the majority of fruits are also alkaline, but you also have some that are acidic because we need acid and alkaline. We just need a good balance, that's all. That's why you always hear that word, that number 7 or that number 8. You stay right there in your pH balance and you're good to go. And so what we need to understand is that we're going to need to consume high levels of raw fruit and raw vegetables. And as you do that, that's why our cooking class on Sunday, we're really going to make that an educational experience. We want you to really know how much of this should you be eating, so that way you can keep your body in a great place of homeostasis, all right? Normal function. But those who don't get enough, especially of alkaline foods, you will find we open the door. If you're eating far more bread and pasta and these type of things, and your vegetable portions are low, but your breads, your pastas are huge. That's how a lot of us eat. You know, if there's rice and beans for dinner and you know, meat or some veggie meat, sometimes that makes up the majority of our plates. And then we got this little remnant of vegetables and fruit. My wife, bless her heart, I mean, she had to do it to me. I was the kind of guy, I felt I need some starch, you know, I need some good carbohydrates. So she would go ahead, I would load my plate up and I'd have those little remnant bowls of salad. And my wife was like, enough's enough. And so one day my wife was like, Dwayne, eat your salad. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the thing and I'm like, I see a plate with, she did it good. She put a napkin over the plate so I couldn't see what was under it. So I was just like, oh man, she hooked me up. I said, man, this is a lot of rice and beans and all that stuff. And I take it off and it was all salad. And it looked like an absolute rainbow. I mean, it was just green and orange and light green and dark green and purple, all these colors. And I'm just like, girl, what are you trying to, if I eat all of this, I'm not gonna have a lot of room for the rest of my stuff. She said, that's the point. But I'll tell you this, eating like that, man, I mean, you just got energy galore. I mean, you're just bubbling over. I mean, you good. It's like, seriously, you can just do cartwheels, everything. I mean, you're bubbling over with energy. And I love it. And because I'm a traveler, I really have to protect my body because I'm always around stuff that can get people sick. And so you'll find that the more vegetables, the more fruits you're eating, you're putting yourself in the better place to avoid the cancer. The less vegetables, the less fruits you're eating, it is almost like indirectly opening the door and say, hey, cancer, come here, big guy. You're inviting them in. So you want to start keeping that up. You got that? All right, continuing. The World Health Organization has made it crystal clear, folks. I don't know if it gets any easier than this. Colon cancer especially. The World Health Organization said Monday that eating processed meat, that's your bologna, your salami, that's your hot dog, stuff like that. It says eating processed meats such as sausages, ham, causes cancer, okay? While unprocessed red meat may also be carcinogenic. There goes your hamburgers, your steaks, all of these different things. It says the World Health Organization Cancer Research Unit now classifies processed meat as carcinogenic to humans. That means cancer causing, based on evidence from hundreds of studies, and linked it specifically to what? Colon or colorectal cancer. The World Health Organization now classifies processed meat in the same category as smoking and asbestos, based on its certainty of a link with cancer, but stressed that did not mean that they were equally dangerous. And so if there's one thing that you want to do to definitely open up the floodgate to cancer is the more red meat and processed meats. If you're the kind of person that you're making all these salami sandwiches, your bologna sandwiches, your hot dogs, and you're doing steak, and you're doing hamburgers, and you're doing meatloaf, if you're doing a lot of the red meat stuff and processed meat stuff, you are opening the floodgate wide to get colon or colorectal cancer, let alone other cancers. And so that's another cause. It's how we're eating. We're putting things in our system. And look at this. Isn't this a lovely pyramid? This is a whole food, plant-based diet pyramid. Let's do some magnification on this, okay? So what do we got here? For your fats and your oils, what are the best things we could eat? Almonds, pecans, walnuts, avocado, olive oil in moderation. And remember what we don't do with olive oil. Who remembers what we're not going to do with the olive oil? Do not apply heat to that, okay? Take it cold pressed, pour it just unheated, and let that do it. It does not tolerate heat very well, and it can change its chemical composition and become carcinogenic. When you're talking about your leafy greens, folks, spinach, broccoli, kale, lettuce, gold, 2 to 3 servings a day. I'd prefer to say 4, but 2 to 3 servings minimum, but definitely 4. What else? You got your legumes. You got a whole family over there. Black beans, chickpeas, flax seeds. By the way, if there's one thing that I would recommend every single one of us in this room do is get that flaxseed in every day, especially if you're trying to avoid cancer. There's something flaxseed has that chia seeds don't. Chia seeds are very good, super high level nutrition, but flax seeds have something called lignans inside of them. Lignans is a cancer-fighting agent in flaxseed that you will not get with chia. And so you crush your flaxseed. Remember, you grind it like in a coffee grinder of some kind, and you put it in a little Tupperware thing and you put it in the refrigerator. Always refrigerate it. Do not leave it on the counter. Put it in the refrigerator. Some people put it in the freezer. And what you do is in the morning, 2 tablespoons. This is for adults. 2 tablespoons, mix it with a smoothie, mix it with applesauce, mix it with a yogurt. You can mix it with many things, and then you just take it down. And then in the afternoon, over that big salad, right? No more little remnant stuff. The big salads, you go ahead and take 2 scoops again, and you put that over your salad, and you will find major cancer fighters, okay? When you load your body up with these type of nutrients, family, that's how you start defeating cancer, whether you have it or if you're trying to avoid it. Load your body up with nutrients. Remember, your blood cells need nutrients. So when you give it that, it says, well, I'm going to give you protection. And it protects your body, okay? Continuing. I can't say enough about this, even in the vegetable world. Go organic. Now, I'm not saying go organic on like every single thing, but you really want to watch out for genetically modified foods. How many of you like the fact that Burger King now has the Impossible Burger? How many, have y'all heard about that? The Impossible Burger? Just remember, the Impossible Burger is genetically modified, okay? It is for that reason that I cannot, in good conscience, recommend even the Impossible Burger, especially if you have heart disease, because the sodium level is almost 5 times the amount of sodium that you get in a regular burger, okay? So that's not good, especially if you have heart disease. And the same thing goes for Beyond Meat, okay? Beyond Meat, the Beyond Burger, definitely not GMO, so that's good. But sodium levels really high. So if you have heart disease, I would never recommend that you eat a Beyond Burger because it's just too risky. The sodium level is way too high, and it's going to cause some complications. But the bottom line is that we got to get to the place that if the food, what are some foods that are genetically modified? Well, first of all, you got soy, okay? Corn. Even if it's popcorn, tortillas, any of that, non-GMO. Do not get genetically modified. If you get tortillas and it does not say non-GMO, it is GMO. Okay? So you need to make sure it has to say USDA organic or non-GMO. If you don't see those signs on your popcorn, tortillas, even on your corn flakes, any of the corn-based cereals, non-GMO, USDA organic. You have to have one of those signs there. And that lets you know that you're okay. Now watch this. This is why, again, look at what the World Health Organization has said. World Health Organization unit finds the 2,4-D herbicide possibly causes cancer in humans. Okay? That's a lot of this Roundup stuff, that the glyphosate that's being produced by Monsanto. Now watch. A widely used farm chemical that is a key ingredient in a new herbicide developed by Dow AgroSciences possibly causes cancer in humans. A World Health Organization. Now they said possibly. It's no longer possibly. Watch this video.
For the second time, a jury has found Monsanto's Roundup weed killer played a role in causing cancer. Yesterday's unanimous decision determined Roundup caused or was a substantial factor in causing 70-year-old Edwin Hardeman's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Anna Warner is here with how this verdict could affect thousands of other lawsuits claiming the herbicide causes cancer. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. This is just the first phase in Hardeman's case against Monsanto and its new parent company, Bayer, which contends Roundup's active ingredient glyphosate is safe. Attorneys will now go back to the jury to decide whether or not the company is liable and has to pay monetary damages.
Edwin Hardeman's attorneys say he started using Roundup products back in the 1980s to treat poison oak and weeds on his property in Northern California. He continued to do so until 2012. 3 years later, he was diagnosed with cancer.
Roundup extended control.
Roundup's manufacturer says its product is not to blame. In a statement, Monsanto's parent company Bayer says, "We have great sympathy for Mr. Hardeman and his family, but an extensive body of science supports the conclusion that Roundup was not the cause of his cancer." The jury disagreed, unanimously deciding that Roundup was responsible. This is the second time a jury has ruled against the product's manufacturer. In August of last year, Dwayne Lee Johnson was awarded $289 million in damages after the court determined Roundup was also a substantial factor in causing his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A judge later lowered that award to $78 million, and Monsanto has appealed. I spoke with Johnson last year.
What did that verdict mean to you?
The verdict really meant to me that this thing was not done in vain. And I remember standing there saying to myself, if I lose this case, this company is going to be able to get away, and then they'll be able to say, see, I told you our stuff didn't do that.
Attorneys for Edwin Hardeman say their client is pleased with the verdict. In a phone interview, co-counsel Jennifer Moore says in the trial's second phase, they'll seek to prove Monsanto knowingly misled the public.
They knew for decades that Roundup can cause cancer, and frankly, they just didn't care.
This is a big loss for Bayer and Monsanto. It proves that juries are being convinced that Roundup is causing cancer.
And there's a lot at stake here. Bayer is facing more than 11,000 lawsuits connected to Roundup. Now, it contends the jury's decision Tuesday has no impact on future cases and trials. They say each one is different legally and factually, and says more than 800 studies from around the world confirm the product is safe when used as directed. But there's not total agreement on that. The state of California disagrees. Another world agency at arm of the WHO disagrees.
It seems like the jury didn't come to this decision lightly either. Anna, thank you.
So here we are, that GMO, this is something that's really big now. You can't ignore it anymore. If you eat genetically modified foods, there's a risk factor to that. More and more lawsuits are coming out now against Monsanto. Now, Monsanto's been a beast for years. They're a guilty organization on many levels, actually. But it's just very recently that they're being connected now, their glyphosate, with cancer. So again, these are things you want to pay attention to. So even when you get quote-unquote healthy food, again, pay attention to what are the foods that are often genetically modified, and then make sure, whatever they are, get non-GMO of those foods. Yes?
Back in the 50s and 60s, Monsanto's developed the DDT, which was killing everything off, and everyone started putting it in food. Were they allowed?
Precisely. And that's because money still talks. Cash is still king. And so as a result of that, if you got enough money, it's kind of like when people started getting, diseases with breast cancer and they connected it back to the dairy industry. How many of you have ever seen the video, What the Health? How many of you have seen that video? You need to look at that. I mean, that video, I loved it. I mean, because not only did the gentleman just kind of walk everybody through the realities of the dairy industry and all these problems. But what I love that he did was he went to the American Diabetes Association. He went to the American Cancer Association, and he marveled, why is it that you're putting recipes, suggested recipes, with food groups that the World Health Organization said are cancer causing? Like, we just saw how red meat can cause colorectal cancer. Go to the American Cancer Society's website, and you'll literally see that when they offer recipes, they're beef-based. So you're kind of like, guys, the World Health Organization just said, why are you offering? And when he interviewed with the guys at the American Diabetes Association, right on camera, he said, why is it that you all are advertising these things and so on? And literally the man said, I will not talk about that. And I mean, he was like, so, I mean, you know, we're talking about this, but it's a fact that these things are causing cancer. So why is it that you're offering? I will not talk about that. And he insisted, if you keep asking me, the interview's over. And then he just walked out and walked away. And so, ladies and gentlemen, listen, this big money makes a lot of things move. And when you mess with people's money, they can make scientific reports appear that are not legitimate. And so the reality is that we live, if you remember opening night, I showed you a video where the lady said, we are in the middle of a big organization that likes to make money, and they don't want to stop making money. And that's the issue. So there's some things we can't control, but you can take charge of your life. You understand that? And that's what we're encouraging you to do this evening. We'll take the two hands here. Yes, and then yes. Exactly. That's right. Very good. So yeah, again, you're talking about a $2 billion lawsuit. $2 billion. You know, so Monsanto's losing money hand over fist, but they can afford to lose money because they're an extremely wealthy organization. You know, so they're not going to cry overnight about it. But the bottom line is that this is the reality. It is being proven that a lot of this stuff that we've been fed and was told it's safe is not safe. Yes.
Going backwards, when you first started, it's a two-pronged question. When you were giving figures on the white count, what's the norm for a white count? Flip that real fast. If I were to ask my doctor, could I get a white count? Would you think I'm being a revolutionist? Or?
No, no. An annual checkup. You remember last night I said to you all, I said, if you're going to get a checkup with your doctor, get a CBC. Right. That's going to include your white blood cell count. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that is handled. They will never, ever combat that. If you say, I'd like a CBC, I haven't had one done this year, they're going to say, no problem. There's not even going to be a question.
Now, is that automatically when you're diabetes? That's not automatic?
No, that's just for a checkup. If you're super healthy or if you're super sick. If you have not gotten a checkup this year and you would like to get a checkup, when you go to your doctor, the first thing they're going to put on the list is a CBC. First thing. Again, your ranges on the lab report is typically 4,000 to 10,000. That's going to be your numbers. So they're going to want to see you above 4 and below 10. Okay? If you're above 10, that's usually infection or cancer. If you're well below that, that could be some concerns too. It all depends. Okay? All right. Now, what do you think that is? You know, we talk a lot about meat, don't we? Ladies and gentlemen, sugar. If you're gonna kick cancer to the curb, you must not feed it. And one of the things that cancer cells absolutely love is sugar. So now I want you to watch this video clip. Take a look at this one.
A clear relationship between sugar and cancer leads scientists to two conclusions. Sugar use contributes to cancer, and going without it can slow growth of the disease.
100 years ago, most folks consumed only 4 pounds of sugar a year. That's this much. Now, however, the average person takes in 40 times this amount, 160 pounds of sugar a year. That's this much.
Food manufacturers add enormous amounts of sugar, usually in the form of high fructose corn syrup, to products we consume all day, every day. Coffee drinks and cereal, soda and snacks, even foods you wouldn't expect, like spaghetti sauce and peanut butter. This tiny container of yogurt contains more sugar than a candy bar.
Now, scientists tell us sugar directly influences cancer cells. The amount we consume can either feed those cells or starve them. In a landmark study, researchers at UT/MD Anderson Cancer Center fed mice high fructose corn syrup in percentages equal to what many humans consume. Those mice developed higher rates of lung and breast cancer compared to mice fed less sugar. The study also tells us something about people who already have cancer. One researcher said a lot of patients are told it doesn't matter what you eat after you are diagnosed with cancer. This preliminary animal research suggests that it does matter.
And it just absolutely amazes me that medical science is just now finding this out.
Fred Hatfield knows firsthand sugar intake matters after a cancer diagnosis. Back in 2012, his diagnosis was basically a death sentence.
The doctors gave me 3 months to live because of widespread metastatic cancer in my skeletal structure. 3 months. 3 different doctors told me that same thing.
It's a horrible, horrible feeling to have someone tell you that the person that you love only has 3 months to live and you're not going to be with him anymore.
Then Fred heard about a low-sugar diet called the ketogenic diet, believed to slow cancer in some people. With nothing to lose, he gave it a try, and to his astonishment, it worked.
And the cancer was gone completely.
Fred's recovery didn't surprise Dr. Dominic D'Agostino. His team at the University of South Florida discovered mice with highly aggressive metastatic cancer continued living when fed a ketogenic diet.
We have dramatically increased survival with metabolic therapy. So we think it's important to get this information out.
And it's not just lab animals. Dr. D'Agostino has seen similar results in humans.
I've been in correspondence with a number of people, probably at least a dozen people, and over the last 1.5 to 2 years, and all of them are still alive, so despite the odds. And so this is very encouraging.
The ketogenic diet means no sugar and no starchy carbohydrates like bread and pasta that convert to sugar. D'Agostino says cancer cells love sugar and starch because cancer thrives on the glucose from those foods. Remove the glucose and starve the cancer cells. Glucose also fuels our healthy cells, but if it's not there, those cells can switch to an alternate fuel source called ketone bodies. Cancer cells only run on glucose.
Your normal cells have the metabolic flexibility to adapt from using glucose to using ketone bodies. But cancer cells lack this metabolic flexibility, so we can exploit that.
Since processed food contains so much sugar and starch, people following the ketogenic diet tend to cook whole foods from scratch.
You can go online and there's just cookbooks and, it's clean eating, just very clean eating. None of the sugars, the salts, the trash food.
So when it comes to cancer, sugar is considered public enemy number 1. Avoiding it could lead to prevention or slow it down in people fighting the disease. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
So we cannot say enough about the concerns with sugar, and especially refined sugars. Even if you don't have cancer, I would really like to recommend do not consume refined sugars, high fructose corn syrup, or your regular white sugars. I'm even suspect on cane sugar because you're noticing that there's cane sugar and then there's unrefined cane sugar. So that means that a lot of the cane sugar a lot of us are eating is refined too. So what are your safe sweeteners? Well, first and foremost is fruit. If you can use fruit, and especially dates. I've seen people make smoothies with dates, and you can make pies and cakes and all sorts of things with dates. So again, if you can use dates, that's probably your number 1. Your number 2 is if you do use a sweetener, try to use honey. Honey is good, raw honey especially. That's also a very good sweetener. Maple syrup, that's also a fairly good sweetener. These are better sweeteners than a lot of the other, deeply processed types that a lot of us typically eat when we go to a fast food place. And again, I'm talking to even the quote-unquote vegans in the room. Sometimes we are really overboard on the sugar while we're avoiding the meat, and sometimes the sugar can do almost equal damage that the meat will do to you. All right? So again, avoid the sugars, okay? Now, if you want to avoid cancer, if you want to overcome cancer, you need to get some good sleep, all right? And when we talk about getting good rest, listen to this. Those who sleep for less than 6 hours per night for at least a 2-week period have the same cognitive function of a person who's legally drunk. It's called sleep debt. So if you keep getting less than 6 hours of sleep night after night, after a little while, your cognitive ability gets debilitated, okay? And you can also get more irritable, and you'll find that you get angrier easy, things of that nature. So it's very important to get good rest. Now, Dr. Eve Van Couters, a sleep science trailblazer, whose research team at the University of Chicago found out some pretty deep stuff. Watch what she found out. And I meant to give this to you last night in the diabetes, so I'm kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone here, because I felt so bad when I was like, I did not cover this last night. So I want you to look at this. This applies to diabetes, but also cancer. After 4 hours of sleep for 6 consecutive nights, healthy young men had blood test results that nearly matched those of diabetics. Their ability to process blood sugar was reduced by 30%. It says they had a huge drop in their insulin response, and they had elevated levels of a stress hormone called cortisol, which can lead to hypertension and memory impairment. In this one quote, we just killed 3 things: hypertension, diabetes, and you'll see how it connects to cancer. You got to get good sleep. Again, to the travelers in the room, I know I'm a traveler, I know you're a traveler. We can gamble a lot, we can burn out a lot, but we really want to make sure that we're getting good rest, even in the midst of our travels. Yes? Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. The one before this? Okay. Oh, yes, this one here. No problem. Sure. You good? Okay. So again, family, this is just something that we have to pay attention to. We've got to get good sleep. Now, where does this play a role as it relates to cancer? One of the things that's recommended, Dr. Mersola, there's a lot of good things he puts out there. Not everything is on point, but there's some good things he puts. This one, he hit the nail on the head. Go to bed around the same time each night. Ideally, what time? 10 o'clock, okay? 10 o'clock. Why? Because that's typically going to be your highest secretion of melatonin, okay? Some of us are taking melatonin supplements. I'm just saying you could save some money if you just simply went to bed at the right times and created the right atmosphere, cool room and these type of things. Your body naturally will produce that melatonin, and you will find that it will help you get great sleep. Now, look at this point here. The serotonin in the morning is what you get when you look at sunlight. When the sunlight penetrates the eyes, it produces the serotonin. It's your happy hormone. In the absence of light, your serotonin goes down, your melatonin rises. That's the way it's supposed to work. Watch this. Did you know that good serotonin, melatonin function, if you don't get enough sleep, you cannot make it up for lost sleep. So once you lose it, you lost it. But look at this part. 50% reduction in what? In T cells by losing half a night's sleep. The more you lose sleep, you literally are losing or compromising your T cell function. Your T cells, let me give you another term for T cells, cancer fighters. Okay? So the less sleep you get is the less cancer fighters you're going to have in your body. And eventually, in time, it's going to pay out where, unfortunately, we can get stricken with disease. Our body becomes an atmosphere where we can get sick. So please, get to bed. Somebody says, how much sleep do I need? Pay close attention to the chart. That's how much sleep you need, okay? From newborns to mature adults, or what we would call senior citizens. Notice. Now look, for adults and mature adults, you see the same hours. Typically, for the adults, you're leaning more towards the 9. For the mature or senior citizens, you're leaning more towards the 7. But either way, you're still trying to get between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Say again, senior citizen. So again, I use the example of senior citizen. Oh, what about immature adult? That's a mental state, isn't it? Yeah, the mental state. They need they need to be at tomorrow night where we talk about the mind. Yes. You can get too much sleep. There comes a point in time where you need to rise up out of bed. I don't have I may be able to show that tomorrow evening. There are some things that can happen if you're in bed too long. But I'll show that tomorrow evening. But the key is try to stick within these hours. You'll be fine. Try to stick within those hours. Okay? Sleep. Now, exercise, again, there's so much statistics out on exercise. It has been known that if you and I do 30 minutes of exercise a day, just 30 minutes, aerobic exercise, you mix it with a little anaerobic, like 6 days a week if you can do aerobic, 3 days a week if you can do anaerobic, working out with weights or your own body weight, calisthenics, anything like that. If you do that, you will be amazed at how it can reduce up to 44% of all cancers. Literally, of all cancers, okay? The American Institute for Cancer Research, they show some awesome statistics. Just beautiful statistics. And they just walk you through over and over and over again. When you exercise, you can fight this. So right here, activity lowers the risk of breast cancer, okay? That's why, ladies, you want to be careful. Get more active, okay? But not only that, aim for at least 30 a day. So that's what they recommend. Get 30 minutes a day. Get 30 minutes a day. That's it. It's not trying to eat up your whole day. And it's talking about walking primarily, okay? Got that? I can go ahead. All right. Pick the right activity. That means whatever you'll do. Now, most of the studies on activity and cancer focus on aerobic. So like I told you, get more aerobic in than the anaerobic, but get both in, okay? Get both in. And it's just more additional research. So here's the bottom line. Watch out for inflammation. All of those things, getting proper rest, eating the healthy diet, getting good sleep, all these things, they help fight against inflammation. Inflammation is a normal reaction of the body when wounded, but the danger comes when we go through chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, over time, chronic inflammation can cause what? DNA damage. Now, I can almost guarantee you, most individuals who are diagnosed with cancer, you will often find they had high inflammatory response. And that's why I told you, one of the best ways to avoid the cancer is to keep the inflammation out. One of the best ways to keep the inflammation out is like I've recommended in all of these lifestyle habits. There is a supplement I would recommend. I actually take it myself every day. And like I told you, when I get tested for inflammation, extremely low. It's not even a 1. Curcumin. How many have been hearing a lot about turmeric? You've been hearing a lot about turmeric? Yeah, everybody's talking about turmeric. Curcumin is the component in turmeric that helps keep down the inflammation or hold it back. And there's lots and lots of clinical studies now that some of the most vicious cancers, they're recommending that you take curcumin along with the medications, and they're finding cancers are constantly going in remission. Okay? CURCUMIN. What is the one that I take? And you can get it on Amazon. Amazon is my friend. I don't know him personally, but, I like that. I like Amazon. You can get excellent pricing. So here we go. Go to Amazon. Life Extension. That's the company. Life Extension. And then it's called Super Bio Curcumin. I've been taking this every day for almost 2 years. And when I got an ANA, CRP, E-sedimentation, every test that tests for autoimmunity, inflammation, 0, 0, 0, 0, nothing, just nothing. And that is the best precursor because, again, notice that point here. Over time, chronic inflammation can cause DNA damage, and that's how the cancer kicks in. It's damaging the DNA, and now the mutations start taking place. So our goal, remember, is that cellular integrity, and that's why I recommend the curcumin, okay? Do not take more than 4,000 milligrams in a day. I would recommend, if you don't have any ailments, by the way, curcumin works wonderfully for hypertension, and it works wonderfully for diabetes. Curcumin is a really awesome thing to take. Now, if you're going to take it, I would recommend don't go any further. And please cover it with your doctors, because you may got things going on. There may be some things you're taking that it could be contraindicating. Curcumin could thin the blood a little bit. So if anybody in here is already on Coumadin, I would say, hey, be careful taking curcumin. Talk to your doctor first. But if you're not on blood thinners or anything like that, then you can take curcumin. 2,000 milligrams a day, you should be fine.
Do the doctors really know about natural supplements? I mean, if I said, are there contraindications
Right.
for this with what I take?
Some will. Some will. Because a lot of doctors are getting a lot more astute now. I mean, I do thank God for the medical practitioners of today. Many of them are becoming a lot more cognizant of these things. So yes, I would say so. And you can definitely look it up. You can just type in contraindications. Like you can take your medication, type it in, and just put in your medication and curcumin. You can do it like that, and it'll let you know, okay? Sister Dieta, and then yes. Oh, okay. So you make a good point here. So curcumin is a fat-soluble vitamin. So as a result of that, you need to have some fats with it. And one of the things typically that you're going to need to take if you were taking turmeric supplements is you're going to need something called piperine. It helps the body absorb the curcumin. Piperine you're typically going to find in black pepper. The problem is that we learned some things about black pepper that's not really thumbs up. That's another reason why I like the super biocurcumin. It already has the components in it that it can be properly absorbed without black pepper. All right? So that's another reason why I recommend get the super biocurcumin. It does it all, and there's no black pepper in it. All right? Kind of like a win-win. So very, very, very excellent question. Thank you for that, Sister Dieta. Yes? You can, but the problem is that the curcumin is more concentrated. Turmeric, I'll give you an example. If I'm talking to somebody who's suffering with any kidney problems, we need to keep their oxalate levels very low. What foods are high in oxalates? Spinach and collards, beets, and turmeric. So if anybody is prone to developing kidney stones or anything like that, I would say don't go with the turmeric, go straight curcumin. Because the turmeric is going to have that oxalate component, but the curcumin won't. You understand that? So that's the only thing. So let's say you don't have any kidney problems, no issues like that. You can spread it over your food and absolutely, not a problem. You can do that. Okay? Yes. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say you can also call the pharmacy like at Walgreens. And say, I am on this medication, can I take this herb with it? And they will always give you the answer.
Okay. Awesome. Very good. Thank you for that. So again, our goal is to keep away inflammation, so there goes your anti-inflammatory diet. When you look at your anti-inflammatory diet, these are the kind of things you want to watch out for. So remember, we talked about this the other night. So yes, you want to watch out for you want to enjoy your tomatoes, fruits, nuts, leafy greens, olive oil. We don't recommend the fatty fish because we learned the other night that there's a certain cancer risk connected with fatty fish consumption. Gentlemen, that's a hint. Gentlemen, do you remember what cancer risk rises with the consumption of fatty fish as well as fish oil supplements? What's the cancer risk? Prostate cancer. 71% increased risk of aggressive prostate cancer from eating fatty fish as well as taking fish supplements. So that's the reason why we say there's a better way, okay? All right, we're wrapping it up, folks. Thank you for your patience. Again, what are some anti-inflammatory supplements? You can take anything from ginger to peppermint, the bromelain that's in pineapple, awesome. Of course, you got your turmeric, your bottom left, and your fruits, all of these things, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. They all help fight inflammation in the body, okay? Let's bring it down to a close. Hyperthermia treatments. Now, there's an organization. How many of you in this room are not familiar with an organization called Eden Valley right here in Colorado? Raise your hand if you're not familiar with Eden Valley. Okay, very good. For those of you who raised your hands, there's an organization here in Eden Valley that has medical practitioners that have dedicated their life work to helping individuals who are stricken with disease to overcome it simply and naturally by addressing it from the standpoint of lifestyle. Medical practitioners, but they don't go into the drugs. They deal with the disease from lifestyle. The number one disease that they've had the greatest success with, and you're talking about an hour and 20 minutes from right here, number one disease, cancer. Number one treatment, hyperthermia. What is hyperthermia? Hyperthermia, also called thermal therapy or thermotherapy, is a type of cancer treatment in which the body tissue is exposed to high temperatures up to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Research has shown that high temperatures can damage and kill cancer cells, usually with minimal injury to normal tissues. By killing cancer cells and damaging proteins and structures within the cells, hyperthermia may actually shrink tumors. One of the top ways that you can do a hyperthermia treatment is through something called the fever bath. A fever bath is when you actually sit in water that's very high temperature. It doesn't scald you. But when you sit in that water at high temperature, as you sit in it for a long period of time, it literally starts boosting up your body temperature, and it actually induces a safe fever. When you get a fever, your white blood cells go into radical action. And when they identify those cancerous tumors, that's how the white blood cells can destroy them. Literally, in the pharmaceutical world, this thing called immunotherapy is basically the same principle of hyperthermia. It's just boosting the white blood cell count up very, very high. What do you need to do this? You need a thermometer, because you're always measuring the temperature of the individual, because you don't want their temperature to go too high, because then you risk seizures. You got to have some cold water, because it's all right to get up to here very hot, but you got to protect here. So often when you do a fever bath, you're going to be sitting in the tub like the lady is there, but you're going to get a white, and that's the other thing, a little towel. They're going to dip it in freezing cold water and rest that on your head, and they're going to have you sip a lot of cold water. They need to keep the head cooler than the rest of the body, okay? That's how you can tolerate 106, 107, 108 degrees, is you got to keep the head cool, okay? And then the only way you can do a fever bath is you must have a medical practitioner with you. You do not want to ever try a fever bath on your own. You might literally kill yourself. Okay? People pass out. People have passed out. They literally, and boom, they just pass out. And if nobody's there to get you up, you can die. All right? What exactly happens? It's right there. When you look at a tumor, tumors have blood vessels wrapped around them. Tumors need to stay alive too. Okay? Tumors need to stay alive. So do you know what hyperthermia does? Hyperthermia causes necrosis. Necrosis is the destruction of those life sources. So what it does is these are necro cells, so they destroy the blood supply, they destroy the vessel, and therefore the tumor can't live, and the tumor dies. Hyperthermia. Hyperthermia treatment, and literally that is the claim to fame for Eden Valley. All of their cancer successes are largely based on super high fever baths. That's their claim to fame. And all it is hyperthermia, and look who acknowledges it, the American Cancer Society. Okay? So there are all sorts of things that we can do. And finally, the sauna. If you and I, this is another form of hyperthermia, is you can get into the infrared sauna. We talked about this last night. It says, sweating offers potential and deserves consideration to assist with removal of toxic elements from the body. So that's the reason why I told you last night about infrared saunas. Planet Fitness has infrared saunas in there. Yeah, so, if some of you signed up to Planet Fitness or anything like that, go use the infrared sauna. You can use it every day. All right, that's part of your membership, $20-something a month, and look at what you get. Okay? Yes? It depends on what kind. Were you in a sauna that either had steam or had the rocks, the rocks that's inside of the sauna? It was just dry, because there's two types of dry heat. There's the dry heat that has the rocks in it. There's no steam or anything, but it's different. And then there's the infrared saunas. Infrared saunas, you usually shouldn't have that, or maybe you just went in where the temperature was too high. You need to start at a lower temperature. Okay? Yes? Steamers are good, but it does not get down to the cellular level. Infrared saunas literally ministers to the body to the cellular level. When you're dealing with cancer, you're not going steam. You want infrared. You want it to get down to the cells. All right? Yes? Steam saunas are good, but they're more good for topical in the skin. Okay? But when you want to try to get down to the organ levels and what have you, it's better to do your infrared. Okay? Family, we have spent an awesome amount of time here, and I could spend more time with you, but I don't want to overwhelm you any further. The bottom line is that we truly can defeat cancer. Prevention is better than cure. But even if we are stricken, it's not a death sentence every time. There are scores and scores of individuals who have literally gotten stage 4, quote unquote, death sentences. You're not going to live past 3 months, 6 months, and the list goes on. And people, as a result of faithfully following these laws of health that we've been talking about, have absolutely overcome and has rolled the reverse clock on themselves. And so I just want you to know that there's a lot we can do out there to cooperate with the laws of health, and there's a lot that we can do to avoid or overcome cancer, but we got to cooperate with these principles. All right? Yes, sir. This will be our last question, and then we'll have a word of prayer to close out. I am not an advocate of vitamin B17, the apricot seeds. And the reason why is because there's a newsletter that I sign up to, Dr. Greger. He wrote the book, How Not to Die. And he also came out with a new book called How Not to Diet. And one of the things I like about Dr. Greger is his whole thing is based on nutritional facts. He's like, look, I'm not going to get into hype and talk about what I heard works. He's like, I'm going to show you clinical study data. All right. So he's my kind of guy. So what he did was he did a clinical study on B17. Okay. There are no cases that B17 has actually reversed cancer, but there are definite cases that B17 has increased toxicity in the body. And as a result of that, he said it's hype. He said it's hype. There's nothing out there that we can put our hands on and say, here's the facts that B17 really works. So what he did was he more so said this. So somebody says, but I took B17 and I got well. It's like, yeah, but maybe it had nothing to do with the B17. Maybe it was your exercise. Maybe it was your diet. Maybe it was the sunlight you were getting. Maybe it was the water you were drinking. It wasn't the B17. So what they did in this was a controlled, concentrated study on just let's see the impact of B17. And from those clinical studies, it came back. It increases your toxicity, which, by the way, can increase your chances of cancer. So, no, yeah, I'm not an advocate of B17. Oh, for sure, not a problem. All right, family. Well, we had a wonderful time this evening. Again, lots of information. I know it's a lot. We want to absorb as much as you can, put it into faithful practice, and allow it to be a blessing to you. How many of you are willing to say, you know what? I'm going to put some of these principles in my life, either to overcome my cancer or to most certainly to avoid it. In either case, please so signify by standing to your feet with me. And I thank you for allowing us to go a little bit above our time. We covered quite a bit of information, but I hope that we found it to be extremely beneficial. Let's have a word of prayer. Our loving Father, we thank you so much for the things that you've shared with us. We thank you for these excellent principles. These are principles that came from your hands when you created us. And so, Lord, as we put these laws of health into faithful practice, may it truly prove to be a great blessing to our hearts. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I want to wish you all a good night. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about a very special study, diet and the mind. If you know individuals battling with anxiety, depression, overwhelming fear, and many of these other issues, different psychosomatic disorders, have them come on by tomorrow. We look forward to seeing you. We're going to have a good time studying the Word. Have a good night. Get home safely.